Turn to Artemis 3, landing Americans on the moon before China, which is aimed at sending its own taikonauts there by 2030. NASA cannot take its eyes off the ball. Fortunately, Congress has given clear direction and substantial funding to achieve this goal. In the One Big Beautiful Bill, President Trump and a Republican Congress committed nearly $10 billion to specific parts of the space program, including the Space Launch System and future lunar missions of Artemis 4 and 5, the Gateway Space Station at the Moon, and the International Space Station. The vision for NASA enshrined in the One Big Beautiful Bill is unambiguous, and Congress expects that it will be executed faithfully. And I will note that our friend and colleague, Senator Katie Britt from Alabama, has come to join us. Alabama obviously has intense interest in NASA and space, and Senator Britt, we welcome you to the committee this morning. Investments in hardware alone won't guarantee mission success. Equally indispensable is NASA's workforce. Houston's Johnson Space Center is home to one of the most capable, experienced, and mission-driven workforces in the world. JSC is home to our astronaut corps, America's spacefaring heroes, who represent the best of our nation. Preserving that talent is essential, and I trust that JSC will continue to thrive under Mr. Isaacman's leadership. Mr. Isaacman, I believe, will prioritize stability, accountability, and respect for the men and women who make the agency's missions possible. As the commander of Inspiration 4, the first all-civilian spaceflight, and the first private citizen to walk in space, he knows that every successful mission depends on the skills and the dedication of its crew, as well as the countless professionals supporting them from the ground. Mr. Isaacman, I know that you are as committed to American supremacy in the final frontier as is this committee and the entire Senate. The United States must remain the unquestioned leader in space exploration. And this imperative is why we need to confirm your nomination as expeditiously as possible. My hope is that you will be confirmed and in this role before the end of this year. Finally, a word about our nominee to lead industry and analysis within the International Trade Administration at the Department of Commerce. If confirmed, Stephen Haynes will also help us compete with China. He will support U.S. companies with actionable market intelligence, help them navigate trade barriers, and identify opportunities for expansion into foreign markets. He brings experience as a foreign service officer and from across multiple federal agencies. Both our nominees before us will advance American interests, whether in outer space or here at home. I now turn to Ranking Member Cantwell for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this hearing. Congratulations, Mr. Isaacman, on being renominated to lead NASA, and Mr. Haynes on your nomination to be Assistant Secretary of Commerce. I, too, would like to welcome our colleague, Senator Britt, from a state that has a very robust aerospace community, and look forward to continuing to work with her. And I'd like to say a special welcome to two Washingtonians who are here, Bill Nye, the science guy from Washington, and Mr. Dietrich, who is Mr. Haynes' father-in-law. Great to have you here as well in support of him. Mr. Isaacman, I supported your nomination the first time you came before the committee, and I hope to do so again. I, as the chairman mentioned, hope to get you in this position before the end of the year. But there is no secret that a lot of NASA changes have been made since the last time you were before this committee, including the NASA decision to recompete for the lunar lander, the release of the president's proposed NASA budget, which calls for cutting the agency's budget by nearly a quarter in the workforce, and nearly a third of the science funding cut in half. So given all that, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here to answer questions about NASA's future. And I hope that today's hearing will show that there's bipartisan agreement, strong bipartisan agreement, that we must redouble our efforts to get American astronauts back to the surface of the moon as soon as possible. At our committee hearing in November, we heard concerning testimony from several expert witnesses who left little room for doubt that the current SpaceX lunar lander would not be ready to put Americans back on the moon either in 2027 or 2028. and this is almost certainly would lose the race to China. And I know that you are going to have robust competition. In response, the acting administrator, Duffy, reopened the contract and its competition for the lunar lander that can be ready sooner by the end of 2028. And I think this was the correct decision, and I expect you to continue executing on this plan if confirmed. To be clear, winning the race to the moon is not just about short-term token victories. It is the first step in accomplishing a very long-term presence on the lunar surface, which is strategic economically and in a national security imperative. Mr. Isaacman, I expect to hear from you today about how you will ensure we achieve these goals. NASA is also much more than just a moon exploration program. The agency leads in a number of other vital strategic missions, including aeronautic research, space technology, and of course the agency's critical science mission. NASA is one of the world's leading research and development organizations. I think that's why we have, I don't know, about 50 people waiting outside to get in this hearing room. I think they really believe you're going to get confirmed, and they all want to be first in line to talk about all these developments. NASA is one of the leading research and development organization and agency that feeds a multiple of sectors of innovation, including AI, quantum, advanced aerospace materials, and manufacturing and aviation safety. You and I have had a chance to talk about this issue as it relates to, in my home state, 1,500 companies from a robust aerospace supply chain, including 40 Artemis program suppliers, and this issue of a tech hub working on next generation thermoplastics that is so critical to all space and aerospace manufacturing to get a high rate piece manufacturing production. Nevertheless, as we discuss these issues, OMB Director Vaught has been working to gut NASA's budget, especially in science. Earlier this year, multiple NASA whistleblowers provided evidence showing that OMB was pushing NASA to implement the dangerous cuts requested in the president's budget for fiscal year 2026, disregarding the law and the impacts that this would leave on NASA. This is just unacceptable. Mr. Isaacman, if confirmed, I expect you will push back on these dangerous ideas and advocate for NASA's budget. Oh, I also invite you to visit Washington State. We'd love to continue this discussion on how to generate the next aviation innovation. It's clear that there's a lot going on that will help us on the Moon to Mars mission, not just the 40 Artemis suppliers, but a lot of other issues in how to guarantee our satellite communication for the future and how to make sure that is secure. So thank you again for your willingness to step up to these challenges. Turning to you, Mr. Haynes, have confirmed the Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Industry and Analysis. You will be responsible for strengthening the globe's competitiveness in U.S. industry and overseeing key trade analysis. You would lead a team charged with value-added analysis and tools to support economic policy decisions. No doubt there's been a big sea change since COVID about supply chain issues and supply chain vulnerabilities and the interest that commerce play a larger role in identifying those risk sectors. Myself and Senator Risch have been leading a charge on fusion technology and hoping that we could be very aggressive on supply chain issues if, in fact, fusion technology gets to the actual point of manufacturing in the United States. So I look forward to working with you on those supply chain issues. And I want us to continue to know that we have to reduce tariffs. In my mind, tariffs are causing Americans to be challenged on affordability issues, and I look forward to working with you and asking you questions about that agenda as well. And welcome to our colleague from Tennessee, Senator Hagerty.
Thank you. I will now turn to our colleague from the great state of Tennessee, Senator Hagerty, to introduce Mr. Haynes. Senator Hagerty, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz and Ranking Member Cantwell. Thank you for holding this important hearing. Mr. Isaacman, I want to congratulate you on your nomination and look forward to your confirmation. The reason I'm here today, though, is to introduce a former staffer, a good friend, and a fellow Tennessean, Stephen Haynes. Stephen Haynes is President Trump's nominee to serve as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Industry and Analysis. But before I get into his introduction, I'd like to actually address all of the staff sitting along the walls here today. I hope you'll take a lesson from Stephen Haynes. He did a remarkable job serving on my team, a great member of my national security team, and frankly touched many aspects of our office. He's taking that knowledge and moving it into the administrative branch, and the executive branch into this administration. And he's going to go on to do great things. And I just think it's testament to the fact that the hard work that all of you put in on both sides of the aisle to support our nation and to generate the type of opportunities that we want to see for our children and grandchildren can manifest itself in a career like Stephen's. And I hope, Stephen, that you'll continue to advance your career. It's one of the greatest honors I have to represent to be here and speak on behalf of my former staffers, and to all of you. Thank you for your hard work that you do every day. And I hope that someday I'll be seeing you sitting in a seat just like Stephen. Stephen was one of my national security advisors for 2 years. His counsel was critical, covering nearly every issue that came to my office, from supporting my role as ranking member of the Banking National Security Subcommittee that covers export controls and CFIUS work, to State Department reauthorization and consular issues on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to the important work of funding the government through the appropriations process. Frankly, there wasn't much that Stephen didn't touch in my office. Before his time in the Senate, Stephen served as a Presidential Management Fellow, then as a Foreign Affairs Officer at the Department of State's Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs. Stephen's a graduate of the University of Nevada and holds a master's in Asian Studies from the George Washington University Elliott School of International Affairs. Stephen's understanding of how federal agencies operate and his deep knowledge of foreign policy and national security were evident from the first day he joined my team. This expertise served the constituents of Tennessee remarkably well, and his love for this country and serving the American people is palpable. He's a man of conviction, a man of loyalty and integrity, and precisely the caliber of person we need serving in government. I thank you for considering Stephen's nomination, and I encourage my colleagues to support his nomination as he advances his call to public service. Congratulations, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hagerty. I will now turn to our colleague, Senator Sheehy, to introduce Mr. Isaacman. Senator Sheehy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome back, Jared. I'd say this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but I think we're on number 2 now. So, Monica, great to see you. Thanks for bringing the girls. Before I introduce Jared, Chairman, I'd like to enter in 40 letters of support for Mr. Isaacman's nomination, please.
Without objection.
Thank you. For nearly 70 years, the United States has been at the forefront of space exploration. President Trump knows how critical it is for our country to lead the way yet again as our space program aims to reach new heights, and that's why he chose exactly the right man for the job, Jared Isaacman. I've personally known Jared for several years, sharing an aviation community in Montana and cooperating with him on improving the education experience for our next generation of explorers, astronauts, engineers, NASA administrators at Space Camp in Huntsville, Alabama. Of note, both Jared and I attended Space Camp, and although I would say it lit a spark in both of us to chase the dream of aviation and aerospace, he's been far more successful than I have. We both dreamed of being astronauts as children. The difference is Jared actually is one, whereas I had to settle for the title of senator. We both dreamed of being astronauts as children. America has been the leader of global space travel for generations, pushing the boundaries of space and testing the limits of human endurance and intellect. All Americans should be deeply proud of the incredible accomplishments of heroes like Alan Shepard, John Glenn, Neil Armstrong, Jim Lovell, and many others. The sacrifice and leadership of these brave astronauts is what most Americans know. What they usually don't know is that behind each and every one of these explorers is a massive team of dedicated engineers, program managers, innovators, test pilots, welders, electricians, truck drivers, and families who are the true heroes of our space program. To lead this incredible team requires a leader who not only understands and believes in the mission, but has the interdisciplinary skill set to coordinate these cross-functional teams to achieve critical outcomes. Since the tragedy of the Columbia disaster in 2003, NASA has been an organization of great people searching for revival. And after the cancellation of the shuttle program for 10 years, it's important to remember, for 10 years, the United States was paying Russia taxi fare to send our own astronauts into space. This would make John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, and dozens of other American leaders turn in their grave. And in light of the recent Starliner mission to the ISS that left astronauts stuck in space for almost 9 months, we are reminded that much work remains. President Trump knew it was time for a change, and he chose the right man for the job. Despite Jared's desire to be an Air Force fighter pilot and astronaut as a child, he found out that he was smarter than most and started a disruptive software company in his garage as a teenager. That company grew to be a tremendous multi-billion-dollar success, and that success fueled his ascension in the Hall of Fame as a record-setting jet pilot, an aggressor pilot for Air Force fighter pilots, and most recently, this first civilian ever to conduct a spacewalk. On top of all that, Jared and I share another passion, pediatric philanthropy. Jared has personally donated millions to improve healthcare for at-risk children all over America, yet again underlining his commitment to this great nation. NASA is a point of great pride for our nation. It has carved out new frontiers for mankind and shown the world the power of freedom. China is progressing at a breakneck pace to overtake our space infrastructure and beat us back to the moon, and they fully intend to win. If we don't focus our efforts and commit to victory now, we will find ourselves going to bed under the glow of a red moon. We have a moral obligation to continue to lead on the greatest frontier ever known, and it requires strong leadership. Jared is an articulate leader, a great father and husband, and one of the smartest people in America. Jared understands not only how to manage a complex multi-billion-dollar organization, but how to design and engineer critical systems. And to top it off, he knows how to fly spaceships. NASA is in need of spiritual rejuvenation, and that will take fresh leadership. Jared is the perfect man for the job, and I look forward to adding NASA administrator to his already remarkable resume. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sheehy. I will now recognize Mr. Isaacman for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, Senator Sheehy for that very generous introduction, and distinguished members of the committee. I'm honored and grateful to be here before you again as President Donald Trump's nominee to lead the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. To begin, I'd like to acknowledge my family. So my parents, Sandy and Don Isaacman behind me, my wife, Monica, my two wonderful daughters, Mila and Liv. So over the years, I've found many ways to challenge their patience, and politics is certainly no exception. We are also joined today by 7 astronauts, some of my closest friends and crewmates, together with NASA astronauts that have come to this hearing in support. Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge and appreciate that Senator Britt from the state of Alabama is here today. So not only home to Marshall Space Flight Center, but also to Space Camp, which is where my journey began. As mentioned before, I have lived the American dream. I've been fortunate to have an amazing business and aeronautics career, to have led 2 notable missions to space, to help charitable causes that matter deeply to my family. And now I'm beyond thankful for a chance to repay my debt to this nation by serving alongside the brilliant minds at the world's most accomplished space agency. The last time I sat before you, I introduced myself, my qualifications, and the challenges and opportunities ahead. This time I'm here with a message of urgency. After more than a half-century, America is set to launch NASA astronauts around the moon in just a matter of months. This is a challenging endeavor to say the least, and one that requires full-time leadership. Secretary Duffy, in his letter to this committee endorsing my nomination, emphasized this point. The message is shared by more than 4 dozen other letters of support, including an online petition started by members of the NASA workforce and a letter from 36 NASA astronauts who, like me, have sat through anomaly investigations, launch and flight readiness reviews, and have accepted the risks of going to space and understand what is at stake. And I know it's not lost on anyone in this room that we are in a great competition with a rival that has the will and the means to challenge American exceptionalism across multiple domains, including in the high ground of space. This is not the time for delay, but a time for action. Because if we fall behind, if we make a mistake, we may never catch up, and the consequences could shift the balance of power here on Earth. This Congress, and specifically this committee, understand the urgency of the moment, placing a historic investment in human space exploration that President Trump signed in the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's now time for NASA and its partners to deliver. To that end, I want to assure you, senators, I'm not here for personal gain, to favor or enrich contractors, to close centers, or disrupt programs that are essential to completing America's objectives in space. If confirmed, I'm here to bring urgency and an extreme focus to the mission, to do all I can working with the best and brightest at NASA to lead humanity's efforts to unlock the secrets of the universe and ensure American leadership across the last great frontier. In concert with that grand endeavor, we will ensure the following: the success of the Artemis program that President Trump began during his first term. America will return to the moon before our great rival, and we will establish an enduring presence to understand and realize the scientific, economic, and national security value on the lunar surface. Along the way, we will pioneer the next giant leap in capabilities to extend America's reach even further into space, including expanding and accelerating investments into nuclear propulsion, both nuclear electric and nuclear thermal, and surface power programs. These efforts, in addition to industry partners building reusable launch vehicles, will set the stage for future missions to Mars and beyond. We will never accept a gap in capabilities again, not with our space station presence in low Earth orbit or our ability to send American astronauts to the moon. We will strive to build an orbital and lunar economy that can fund the future we all want to see in space someday and not rely exclusively on the taxpayer. We will begin making the investments now for the inevitable spacefaring future that is just on the horizon. We will make the most efficient use of every dollar allocated, pushing for more X-planes, more rovers and telescopes, more exciting missions like Hubble, James Webb, and Dragonfly, with the aim of enlightening the world through breakthrough scientific discoveries, knowing that if NASA doesn't do it, no one else will. Some of the most talented people in America show up to work at NASA. Alongside a reinvigorated culture and an intense focus on achieving the near impossible, what no other organization is capable of or even dares to accomplish, we will achieve these objectives. And when, not if, we get the job done, it will be because of the professionals at NASA, our international and our commercial partners, this committee in Congress, and President Trump's administration that will have succeeded in ushering in a new golden age of science and discovery. We'll do it for America, for humankind, and in doing so, we will inspire the world and generations to follow to take us even farther. We are just getting started on the greatest adventure in human history, and with urgency and purpose and extreme focus on the mission, NASA will lead the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Isaacman. I now recognize Mr. Haynes for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. And here I was thinking that all the fanfare outside was for industry and analysis, but not the first time I've had my bubble burst. Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, distinguished members of the committee, it's an honor to be with you here today. I'd like to thank President Trump, Secretary Lutnick, and Undersecretary William Kimmett for putting their confidence in me to serve as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Industry and Analysis. I'd also like to extend my deepest gratitude to Senator Hagerty for introducing me today. I feel incredibly fortunate to have his mentorship and support. It's also an honor to have several of my family members here with me, starting with my incredible wife, Erica Haynes, who's sitting behind me. Our first year of marriage, she asked me what I wanted to do with my life career-wise, and I thought I gave her the right answer, which was to be a good dad, to be a good husband. And she gently reminded me that was the bare minimum and challenged me to aim higher. And her continual love and support over the past 10 years of marriage has challenged me to do just that. Our first son, Henry, is here as well. It's the honor of my life to be his dad and to have him by my side. His little brother, Oscar, has been on the planet for a total of 10 weeks. And so he decided to forego the hearing, stay home with his grandmother, probably taking a nap right now. My father-in-law, Guy Dietrich, is here from Washington State. Thank you for being here, as well as one of my 3 older sisters, Heather Prey, and her husband and my best friend, Charlie Prey. My parents, Paul and Christy, were unable to make the trip to Washington, D.C. today, but they're proudly watching from home in Franklin, Tennessee. I inherited a tenacious work ethic and a drive for excellence from my father and a sense of faith and conviction from my mother. They shaped me into the man I am today, and there's no way I could ever repay them for that. I grew up in Franklin, Tennessee in the 90s at the height of Pax Americana. I distinctly remember driving home from school with my mom and her telling me that we lived in the greatest country in the world. And even at a young age, I was filled with a sense of pride and excitement and expectation for the future. I truly felt lucky to be an American. And I carried that pride with me as I left America to study abroad and then start a career in the oil and gas industry in Asia. No matter where I went, who I met, what I did, I always carried that sense that there was no place like home, my home, the United States of America. And then in the early 2010s, I started to notice a shift, like a lot of people, in the global geopolitical and economic landscape. And for the first time in my life, America's future felt uncertain and not guaranteed. And so through the loving encouragement of my wife, who's from the area, decided to move to Washington, D.C., leave the private sector, and pursue a career in foreign policy and national security via public service. And that journey has led me to multiple roles at the Department of State, the Pentagon, here in the United States Senate, and now for the second time at the Department of Commerce. The colleagues that I've worked with along with the experiences that I've gained, have all somehow culminated in the necessary preparation for this specific nomination. For 6 months prior to this nomination, I had the privilege of performing the duties of the Assistant Secretary for Industry and Analysis, learning its policies, its people, portfolios, budget, contracts, learning every facet of the organization. And it's because of that, I feel a sense of pride and excitement to have the opportunity to lead the organization in an official capacity. And if confirmed, my singular focus will be supporting American industry's competitiveness through robust understanding of analysis of sectors and supply chains, improving and growing INA's analytical capabilities to better respond to trade questions facing U.S. policymakers, and empowering the professionals, the people who work at INA to approach their work with a sense of subject matter expertise, mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And to that end, I look forward to working constructively with this committee. Thank you for your time and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Congratulations on both your nominations. And I will say, Mr. Haynes, your 10-week-old son would have certainly been welcome here this morning. With some frequency, senators have been known to cry and sleep fitfully, and so he would have fit well in this body. Mr. Isaacman, welcome back. As you know, NASA's human spaceflight program, and its Artemis in particular, is critical to maintaining U.S. leadership in space. But as I think you can appreciate, spaceflight comes at a significant cost. Its success requires program stability. The United States can't dominate in space if our commitments change wildly from one administration to the next, or from one appropriation process to the next. That's why the NASA section of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which I authored, outlines a stable path forward for the agency. It gives clear guidance on the Artemis moon mission. It paves the way for commercial space stations in low Earth orbit, and it invests in NASA's infrastructure to be able to execute its exploration missions. Will you commit to this committee and to the Senate to full and timely compliance with the law's requirements if you're confirmed?
Yes, Senator, I do.
Let's dive into those requirements. Congress wrote into the One Big Beautiful Bill that there shall be a stable, fully funded path for Artemis, at least through Artemis 5. Congress also dedicated money for the Gateway Lunar Orbit Space Station and the Orion crew capsule. Artemis is the key, I believe, to both beating China to the lunar surface and to maintaining a U.S. presence at the moon. What concrete steps will you take to maintain the Artemis program's long-term stability?
Senator, I appreciate the question, and similar to my previous hearing, I absolutely believe that the current architecture with SLS is the fastest path to achieving our near-term lunar objectives, which should be to return to the moon before our great rival and establish the infrastructure so that we can realize the scientific, economic, and national security value. Now, we have the first mission, which is approaching in just a matter of months, which is Artemis 2, where we will fly around the moon. The next mission, Artemis 3, we're going to land astronauts on the moon. There's a lot that has to happen in between Artemis 2 and 3. So in that respect, I am grateful that the One Big Beautiful Bill affords us the opportunity of additional heavy launch vehicles through Artemis 4 and 5. Now, in order for, with respect to the continuity of the mission, Senator, in order for us to actually land the astronauts on the moon, it will mean that one, or ideally two, commercial partners will have pioneered reusable heavy launch lift capabilities and orbital propellant transfer to get the lander to the lunar environment. And when we see American astronauts walk on the moon again, it means one or both of them were successful. So in doing so, after completing the Artemis 5 mission, which is already contemplated in the One Big Beautiful Bill, we should have numerous options available to us to have routine and affordable missions to the lunar surface for continuity beyond Artemis 5.
It's also part of U.S. law that it is American policy to have sustained human habitation either on the moon or in cislunar orbit. Do you agree with that objective, and do you commit to doing everything humanly possible to achieving it?
I do, Senator. I think the President of the United States would be very excited to see a lunar base.
And I will say, just a minute ago, you talked about competing providers. I want to be very clear. I have no particular interest in one provider versus another. My interest is in making sure the objective is achieved. And at times, some have suggested that the objective of going to the moon and the objective of going to Mars are in tension. I don't believe they're in tension. I believe both are critical. America will be the first to land on Mars. That is critically important. That is written into law, and I was proud to author that provision in law. But I also think at the same time, we cannot lose the moon and lose the race to the moon to China. Do you agree that both are critical priorities?
I do, Senator. And again, consistent with my prior testimony before this committee, there actually are parallel efforts underway. Now, there is no question the overwhelming near-term priority is to return American astronauts to the moon and, again, establish an enduring presence on what is a very scarce piece of real estate that we're interested in at this time. But as I mentioned before,